The night my career ended, I was on stage, doing what I loved most. The lights were warm, the audience was silent, and my violin sang like it never had before. I was 42 years old, a celebrated soloist who had played in the greatest concert halls of the world. I had dedicated my entire life to music, sacrificed relationships, health, everything for the perfection of each note. That night, I was performing a piece I had written myself, a concerto dedicated to my late mother. It was the most personal performance of my life. It was also the last time I would ever hold a violin. My name is Clara Vance, and until that night, I believed in the power of art to transcend everything. I believed that beauty could heal, that music could speak when words failed, that the connection between performer and audience was sacred. I was wrong. Art doesn't protect you from betrayal. Beauty doesn't shield you from greed. And the people who smile at you from the front row are often the ones sharpening the knives behind your back. The person who destroyed me was my manager, Adrian Thorne. He had been with me for 15 years, since I was a struggling young musician playing in small venues for pennies. He discovered me, believed in me, and built my career with the same passion I poured into my music. He was my mentor, my protector, my friend. I trusted him with everything, my finances, my schedule, my future. He was family, or so I thought. The trouble started 6 months before that final performance. I noticed small discrepancies in my accounts, payments that didn't make sense, expenses I didn't recognize. I mentioned them to Adrian, and he dismissed them with his usual charm. Just accounting quirks, Clara. Nothing to worry about. You focus on the music. Let me handle the business. I trusted him. I had always trusted him. Why would I stop now? Then came the diagnosis. A rare neurological condition, the doctors said, affecting the fine motor control in my hands. It was progressive, incurable, and it would eventually make it impossible for me to play. I had maybe a year, maybe less, before my fingers would no longer obey my brain. The news shattered me. Music was my life, my identity, my reason for existing. Without it, who was I? Adrian was there, as always, holding my hand, telling me we would get through this together. He helped me plan a farewell tour, a series of performances to say goodbye to my audience, to play the pieces I loved most one last time. The final concert would be in my hometown, where I had started, playing the concerto I had written for my mother. It was poetic, beautiful, and utterly devastating. What I didn't know was that Adrian had been planning something else entirely. While I poured my heart into those final performances, he was quietly, methodically, stealing everything I had. He had been embezzling from me for years, siphoning money into accounts I didn't know existed. He had taken out loans in my name, mortgaged properties I owned, and was preparing to disappear with millions the moment my career ended. The farewell tour was his masterpiece, a distraction to keep me occupied while he completed his theft. I discovered the truth 3 days before the final concert. A bank statement arrived by mistake, addressed to me instead of the P.O. box Adrian used. I opened it casually, expecting nothing unusual. What I saw made my blood run cold. My accounts were nearly empty. There were transfers I hadn't authorized, payments I had never made, balances that made no sense. I spent the next 2 days digging, calling banks, following paper trails. By the night before my final performance, I knew everything. Adrian Thorne, my mentor, my protector, my friend, had stolen over $5 million from me. He had been planning this for years, waiting for my career to end, waiting for the moment when I would be too broken to fight back. I confronted him in my dressing room, an hour before I was supposed to go on stage. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He just smiled that familiar smile, the one I had trusted for 15 years, and said, "You should have read your contracts more carefully, Clara. Business is business. Art is art. You were always the artist. I was always the businessman. Now I'm just collecting what I'm owed." He walked out, leaving me standing there, shaking, my world collapsing around me. I should have canceled the performance. I should called the police, called a lawyer, done something. But instead, I picked up my violin and walked onto the stage. The audience applauded. The lights warmed my face. And I played. I played like I had never played before, pouring every ounce of pain, rage, and grief into each note. The concerto for my mother became something else, something darker, something that spoke of betrayal and loss and the death of trust. When I played the final note, there was a long, stunned silence. Then the audience rose to their feet, cheering, crying, throwing flowers. They didn't know they were witnessing the last performance of a woman who had just lost everything. After the concert, I went home alone. I sat in the dark, my violin in my lap, and I made a decision. I could let Adrian win. I could fade away, broken and defeated, another cautionary tale of trust betrayed. Or I could fight. I could use the one thing he hadn't taken: my mind. I had spent my life studying music, learning patterns, understanding structure, anticipating resolutions. Those same skills could be applied to other things. To revenge. I started planning that night. I would not go to the police. They would be too slow, too clumsy, too easy for Adrian to manipulate. I would handle this myself. I would become someone new, someone he would never see coming. I would learn his weaknesses, his secrets, his fears. And when the time was right, I would take from him everything he had taken from me. The first step was to disappear. I sold what little I had left, changed my name, and moved to a small town where no one knew me. I let Adrian think I had given up, that I was hiding in shame, that I was broken beyond repair. He did think that. He was arrogant enough to believe he had won. He had no idea that I was watching, waiting, planning. He had no idea that the woman he destroyed was about to become the architect of his own destruction. The hunt was on, and it would be my greatest performance yet. I spent the first year just watching. I moved to a small apartment in a city where no one knew my name, where I could be invisible, anonymous, forgotten. I took a job at a music store, teaching violin to children who would never know they were being taught by one of the greatest soloists of their generation. It was humbling, painful, and necessary. Every day, I would go home and spend hours on my computer, tracking Adrian's movements, learning his new life, his new identity. He hadn't changed his name. He was too arrogant for that. He was still Adrian Thorne, still in the music business, still managing other artists, still living on the money he had stolen from me. He thought I was broken, hiding, defeated. He had no idea I was building a case that would destroy him. I learned everything about his current operation. He was managing 3 young musicians, all talented, all trusting, all completely unaware that they were being groomed by a predator. I watched from a distance as he repeated the same patterns, the same charm, the same promises he had used on me. He was going to destroy them too, bleed them dry, leave them broken when they were no longer useful. I couldn't let that happen, but I couldn't warn them directly. They wouldn't believe me. They would think I was a bitter, jealous has-been, trying to destroy their mentor. I needed another way. The breakthrough came when I discovered that Adrian had a weakness. He was addicted to the thrill of the deal, the game itself. He couldn't resist a challenge, couldn't walk away from an opportunity to prove he was the smartest person in the room. I used that against him. I created a fake identity, a wealthy widow named Margaret who wanted to invest in young musicians. I approached him through a series of intermediaries, making sure the opportunity seemed real, lucrative, irresistible. He took the bait. Of course he did. He always did. Over the next 6 months, I, as Margaret, built a relationship with Adrian. We exchanged emails, had phone calls, discussed potential investments. I learned about his current artists, his plans for them, his strategies for maximizing profit. I also learned about his personal life, his habits, his fears. He was lonely, I discovered. He had no real friends, no family, no one who knew the real him. The charm was a mask, and behind it was a hollow, empty man who craved validation. I used that. I became the one person who seemed to understand him, who appreciated his genius, who made him feel seen. He started to trust Margaret. He started to confide in her. He started to reveal things he should never have revealed. I recorded every conversation, every email, every confession. I built a file that documented not just his theft from me, but his plans to defraud his current artists, his methods of manipulation, his entire playbook. By the time I was done, I had enough evidence to send him to prison for the rest of his life. But I didn't want prison. Prison was too easy, too quick, too anonymous. I wanted something more. I wanted him to feel what I felt, the slow, agonizing collapse of everything he had built. I wanted him to be alone, betrayed, broken. I wanted him to understand, finally, what he had done to me. The opportunity came when one of his artists, a young violinist named Sophie, was scheduled for her breakthrough performance at a major concert hall. It was the same hall where I had played my last concert, the same stage where I had poured my heart out while Adrian was stealing my future. The symmetry was perfect. I reached out to Sophie anonymously, sending her carefully selected pieces of evidence, enough to make her suspicious, but not enough to fully understand. She was young, talented, and smart. She started asking questions. She started digging. She started to see the cracks in Adrian's carefully constructed facade. The night of her performance, I was there. I sat in the back row, hidden in shadows, watching. Sophie played beautifully, with a passion and purity that reminded me of myself, 20 years ago. When she finished, the audience rose to their feet, cheering. Adrian was in the front row, beaming, basking in the reflected glory. He had no idea what was coming. After the concert, I sent Sophie a message. I told her to meet me at a cafe across the street. I told her I had the rest of the story. She came, wary but curious. I showed her everything, the recordings, the documents, the confessions. I told her my story, the story of the woman Adrian had destroyed. She listened, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, horror, and finally a cold, quiet fury. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. I told her. I told her to keep playing, to keep trusting, to let Adrian think he was still in control. I told her to wait for the perfect moment, the moment when he would be most exposed, most vulnerable. And then I told her to strike. She did. 6 months later, at a press conference announcing a major international tour, Sophie stood up and told the truth. She told them about Adrian's manipulation, his theft, his plans to destroy her. She played the recordings I had given her. She showed the documents. She named me as the woman who had saved her. The room exploded. Journalists rushed forward. Adrian sat frozen, his face a mask of shock and terror. Within days, his world collapsed. His other artists fled. His investors abandoned him. His reputation, built on decades of lies, turned to ash. He tried to run, of course. He always ran. But I was ahead of him. I had tipped off the authorities, given them his location, his aliases, his patterns. They picked him up at a small airport, trying to flee to a country with no extradition treaty. I watched the news coverage of his arrest, his perp walk, his face splashed across every screen. He looked broken, confused, completely undone. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. He received 12 years in federal prison. 12 years to think about what he had done, about the lives he had destroyed, about the woman he had underestimated. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to. I had something better, a letter from Sophie, thanking me for saving her career, her future, her life. She wrote that she would never forget what I had done, that she would dedicate her performances to me, that she would make sure my legacy lived on through her music. I read that letter and wept. Not from sadness, from something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I still can't play the violin. My hands are too damaged, my condition too advanced. But I don't need to play anymore. I have something else, a purpose. I mentor young musicians now, teaching them not just music, but how to protect themselves from the predators who stalk the art world. I tell them my story, the story of Clara Vance, the woman who lost everything and found something more valuable. I tell them about Adrian Thorne, about the years of betrayal, about the long, patient hunt for justice. And I tell them about Sophie, the young violinist who became my legacy, my redemption, my proof that beauty can survive betrayal. Adrian is still in prison, with years left on his sentence. I don't think about him much anymore. He's not worth the mental energy. What matters is the music, the students, the future. What matters is that from the ashes of my destroyed career, I built something that might actually last. The last performance of Clara Vance wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new life, a new purpose, a new way of being in the world. And that more than any concert, any applause, any standing ovation, is a legacy worth having. I still have my violin. It sits in a case in my apartment, a reminder of who I was and what I lost. Sometimes, late at night, I take it out and hold it, feeling the familiar weight, remembering the music that once flowed through me. I don't play it. I can't. But I don't need to. The music is still there, inside me, waiting. And one day, when this life is over, I will play again. On some other stage, in some other world, I will raise my violin and play the concerto I wrote for my mother. And she will be there listening, proud, waiting for me to come home. Until then, I have work to do. Young musicians to protect. Predators to expose. A legacy to build. The last performance was just the beginning. And I'm not done yet.